It's hard for me not to fall a little bit in love with Bo Nix. It feels
Hmm.
like he's saying all of the right things. He's doing all of the right things. Last night in the preseason game for the Broncos, he was 8 of 9, 80 yards and a touchdown. But listen, it's the preseason. The NFL regular season is a bit different. So I feel like I have to caution myself because here's the thing for the Broncos. Nobody's expecting them to win the Super Bowl this year. If you remember last year, they finished that disaster of a season at 8 and 9, didn't make the playoffs. But here's the thing. That was a dumpster fire of a season. They still won 8 games. So now
Yeah.
I'm looking at the win total for the Broncos this year. It's 5.5. It's juiced to the under at minus 115. So what I'm thinking, Jenks, is if they can get anything out of Bo Nix and Sean Payton, looks a little bit better and he's not actively trying to sabotage his quarterback, maybe this is a team that can win 6 games. So are you a believer in the Broncos this year, at least enough for them to win 6 games?
You know what? I am. Now, they might just get to six.
Right.
This is definitely a rebuilding year for the Broncos, even though Sean Payton will never say that. He has too much pride. But look, Bo Nix, I think, is going to have a really good season. And I'm not just saying this based on what we've seen in the preseason. I remember going back and the initial reports, I mean, as soon as he showed up for, it wasn't even 2-a-days, it was during like OTAs. And the early word was, dude, Bo Nix looks awesome. So I don't know if he's going to have some sort of breakout season. But when Sean Payton, I mean, this is what he does, right? He helped Drew Brees become a Hall of Famer down there in New Orleans, a precision offense, a timing offense. And remember, this is Sean Payton's handpicked guy. Bo Nix went
Yeah.
sixth overall, and people said, whoa, what are you doing? But he said, I really like this guy. He has that college experience, and everything we've heard up to this point has been he could be the guy. So he could surprise us as a rookie. They did a good job of adding to that defense. That was one of their real issues last year was stopping the run. But they brought in a lot of guys like Zach Allen, John Franklin Myers from the Jets to solidify that defensive line. They need to run the ball better. But if they can get a semblance of a running game, to sort of open up the offense just a bit, they're going to be better defensively. They recovered more fumbles than any defense in the NFL last season. So there is some strength on that defense. And then you have an offense led by a rookie quarterback who could surprise us a little bit. It's going to be close. I think they get to six.
Yeah, I think there are a couple things in there that maybe are not super repeatable because anytime you look at fumble recoveries, that feels like a stat that could really go either way. Of course, you give some credit to the defense, but when you recover the most fumbles in the entire NFL, maybe that doesn't go your way this year. But I will say this again, for a team where the market is low on, I feel like this is where you can find value in the betting market for teams who have very public disasters. Because look at the Broncos last year. I think everybody saw that game in which they gave up 70 points to the Miami Dolphins, and that's all we remember from this Broncos team. But they
Mm-hmm.
actually had a good stretch of play in which Russell Wilson actually put up like serviceable numbers. So you look at Bo Nix, maybe there's a way that he doesn't put up great numbers because it's hard for all rookies. But you've got to remember, he's 24 years old. He's not 21 coming into this league as a young cat. He also has somebody who's known as an offensive guy. Sean Payton is known as a quarterback guru. So I feel like he has some weapons at his disposal as well. So I'm not super high on the Broncos, but I'm high on them enough to get to their win total. But Jenks, let's talk about offensive rookie of the year because this is a market in which we have seen the number shortening for
Mm-hmm.
Bo Nix. And of course, we've been piling on saying all these good things about Bo Nix. But if you look at the offensive rookie of the year odds, he is the fourth favorite behind Caleb Williams plus 120, Jane Daniels 6-1, Marvin Harrison Jr. plus 650 in Arizona. And then it's Bo Nix at 13-1, which those odds have already shortened. I believe he was 16-1 over the summer, but he has been improving. And let me preface this by saying he has not been announced as the day one starter, but I
Mm-hmm.
do think Sean Payton gets kicked off a mountain if he names Zach Wilson the starter. I don't see that happening. So I do think that Bo Nix actually has a fighting chance of winning Offensive Rookie of the Year. Because isn't this award usually given to a quarterback? Like if a quarterback does well as a rookie, I
Yeah.
feel like he gets the extra nudge forward. So a lot of this maybe hinges on what you think of Caleb Williams, but Caleb Williams is plus 120. Is there any value in considering Bo Nix at 13-1?
I think so, sure. Caleb Williams has looked great. Don't get me wrong. And we'll talk about him in the next segment. He looks like the real deal. It's early, but he looks great. But yes, from a value perspective, I don't want to bet plus 140. And also, I think it depends on, too, like the Sean Payton, Bo Nix connection here, I think is the reason why you take a hard look at Bo Nix, at least from a value perspective, because we know Sean Payton and his history. He's the offensive guru, right? He's the guy that's going to make sure he puts his quarterback in a position to succeed. If Bo Nix looks good, and Sean Payton seems to have a ton of confidence in him, he'll let Bo Nix sling it around. So when you're getting that sort of value and you know you have a head coach who trusts his quarterback and who will allow his quarterback to throw the football a lot, then there's a chance Bo Nix could end up putting up big numbers. Now, I think Caleb Williams will end up being the guy. Maybe Jaden Daniels as well. Jaden has looked very, very good for the Commanders early on. But for a guy who has a head coach like Bo Nix does, and remember, he has that extra college experience as well. So I think that's why we're seeing some of these guys who spent some extra time in college. Even Michael Penix Jr. down with the Falcons in his limited action has looked good. These older guys who spent more time in college are a little bit more advanced as rookies. That's another thing I think Bo Nix has working to his advantage. So I like the value there.
Yeah, and especially with Sean Payton, which you can say what you want about him. Say that he had Drew Brees for a long time, which certainly helped, but he has never won fewer than 7 games in his entire career. So if you're asking me if the Broncos can win 6 games, I think I'm going to hit that. I'm going to go with the over 5.5 wins for the Broncos.